the two and one.
Alrighty. Okay, so we're talking about meetings today, and for many of us, meetings can be incredibly frustrating, very challenging, and quite often a considerable waste of time. And so, as I was, researching and doing some prep for this episode, I found some stats, Matthias, that I wrote in our notes that I think they're pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
And so Atlassian did a survey, and I think they talked with over 1,000 companies. And the data was that 72% of meetings are deemed ineffective. 72%. That's bonkers. And then there was another study that I saw that was out of Stanford Business School, and they claim that more than half of meetings are rated as poor.
That's an interesting distinction, though. Like, do we have any insight as to what Atlassian's survey people deem as ineffective?
Ooh, that's a good follow-up. I'll have to look into that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what about them made them ineffective? But I think we'll probably touch on that in some way.
Yeah.
So yes, in this episode, we're going to talk about our favorite topic. Well, maybe not favorite, but which is meetings. It's also a chapter in our book, The Intentional Organization. The chapter is actually called Meetings. Matthias, do you know why we called it? Remember why we called it Meetings?
I want to, because there's so many of them. Or
yeah,
okay.
There's so many of them, and then we all are so exhausted, so we're just like meetings, right?
We could have also called it back to back, which is it's almost like a verb and a badge of honor. But somehow that doesn't appeal as much,
right?
And maybe it's too close.
So I think in this episode we want to dive into the kind of the why behind all these poor and ineffective meetings, and maybe share some tips for improving your meetings going forward. How's that sound, Matthias?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so I'm just going to put you on the spot. Why do you think people hate meetings so much?
Where do we even begin? Like, how much time do we have for this episode? Let's see. The word ineffective probably is the word I almost preferred the word poor in the second survey that you quoted, the Stanford Business School one. And I think poor maybe a little bit easier to define in that, referring to how a meeting is run. How it's run. Are there any decisions being made, or are there any notes being taken? Those kinds of things. Like, is it clear what happens after the meeting? And in my experience, and I will also say, like, for meetings, that in my early days as an executive and founder, they didn't achieve any of those things. Like, they were unstructured, unplanned, people were unprepared, usually because they also keep running from meeting to meeting and there's no time to prepare. And then during the meeting, there are people who hog these meetings, or just keep talking all the time, who talk over others. Sometimes people are put on the spot in meetings to make a comment and a decision. I can only speak for myself, at least, maybe in my earlier days, like, that used to make me quite uncomfortable. Like, when a topic started coming up in a meeting, came only up in that meeting, and then I was already expected to have an opinion about it, especially when you fall more on the introverted side of things. That's a difficult thing. And so there's also an interesting gap between folks who are more introverted and folks who are more extroverted. For folks who are extroverted, meeting is the default medium, so to speak. And if people who are introverted, they can take stuff in and then take it with them, think about it, and then maybe write up a thing. And I think that's maybe a rough idea for me, like why people don't like them so much. And also because they're Yeah, there are just so many of them. And when you have this many meetings and they're all not well run, um, it's just, this was just frustrating. Like it used to be incredibly frustrating for me, in those years. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think? Is there,
Oh, you touched on so many good things in there. I even wrote down, I mean, all the unplanned, unprepared, unstructured, and then the personas that just happen in meetings that we don't really consider, the meeting hog, the introverts, the extroverts. Yeah, and the fact that we're just in this perpetual cycle of meetings, it's hard to get out of it.
it's an odd hamster wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's this just we get into this rut, right? These habits around meetings, and they're just not. Yeah, they're they're not fun.
Yeah.
And
There's,
which is why I think these stats just aren't that surprising to me. Like
yeah.
I've been part of the problem. Let me just be clear. I've run some terrible meetings throughout my career, that have not been, all the buzzwords. They're not optimized for efficiency or effectiveness. I've been the back to back, just
Mm,
go from meeting to meeting to meeting. I've fallen into it myself with my teams.
yeah.
Matthias, I mean, you even witnessed it when you first joined Reaction Commerce. You joined a bunch of meetings, and yeah, we fell into, what worked in the earlier days just had stopped working, but we hadn't really assessed it or changed it, and
Yeah.
kept adding more people to meetings, and it just becomes this. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I felt that because I've done the same things in a previous, founder and executive cycle where there were just 9 people in meetings or 9 or more even at times. And then, it became just a very monotonous, some updates. Well, there's something happening here. There's something happening there, but I don't really have anything to report yet. And so you just go from person to person. And, even whether I will be honest, like I haven't had meetings in an actual meeting room. I haven't had many of them over the last 10 years. So I've just had more been looking at, the tiny squares or rectangles of people on screens. And you could just see how, as soon, maybe in anticipation of, maybe they started paying attention when they were almost next, but
Yeah.
then they stop paying attention instantly again after they were done and
Yep.
focusing on something else, right? And even when you then talk to people afterwards, like, oh, well, I just, sent some emails and things. Well, it doesn't really concern me. Like, I wasn't really that interested in it, which is like the other part of why people just don't like meetings. And
Yep.
it's like they just feel like everyone's giving an update. And uh, there's really nothing you get out of it because on a weekly basis, these updates maybe aren't as interesting, or
Yep.
maybe there's a cross department meeting,
Yep.
which is, what was the case for when I joined Reaction, and it was also the case in my previous leadership team. And people just, people either don't really say a lot because they think that nobody else cares, or people just really share a lot and, well, nobody cares. Like, it's just, it is odd. Like,
Yeah.
when meetings become just these status updates with somehow is the norm. Like this an almost inevitable temptation for a meeting to move from, well, we're a small team and this is actually clicking very well and this is serving a nice purpose for us, to 10 or more people you know, just going
Yep.
through, I did this happened next, which was actually, I think, the very first weekly meeting I experienced in my career was just like 15 or so engineers sitting
Mm.
around a table. in an
Wow.
actual meeting room, and everybody just giving updates. That wasn't the worst one. The worst one was when I worked for a client. They did a daily stand up, and there
Mm.
must have been like 25 to 30 people
Oh,
in
wow.
that stand up. It was an
Yeah.
incredible waste of time, but it was also just before lunch. So nobody really cared. And people were just keen to get this over with and to go for lunch. So nothing really useful got shared.
Right. Right.
Anyway, like this, I mean, it's a pattern that, we've seen over and over again that I think our clients also experience, especially as
Yeah.
they move through the first growth stage of a company, maybe moving closer to 50 people, where it's just gotten so comfortable to do this. And as you said, like these meetings just stick. Like
Yeah.
they're impossible to change. Anyway, I'm very opinionated on meetings. Like I'm just, in case anybody was wondering.
Lots to go on there. Let's let's try to get a little specific on what actually leads to these ineffective meetings. Like, what are some of the, I don't know, barriers, or what are some of the things that you see with your clients? Um, you've already touched on some of them, and I see it. I've done it myself, and I've seen it with my clients, which is like there's just no there's no purpose, right? There's no like, what is the meeting for? What's the goal of
Mm,
this meeting? We say this, I think, in the opening chapter of our book on the meetings chapter, that no meeting should happen without an agenda. And I think that alone is one of the biggest barriers to meetings being really poor. Like, what's the goal? What's the purpose of this meeting? And
mm.
just sharing that in advance. That one little thing, without it, leads to so many ineffective meetings. But I'm wondering if you had thoughts there on what are some of those barriers that lead to all these ineffective meetings.
I think, yeah, you mentioned these two, like having a clear goal and a clear agenda. And there's, this is, I remember I was facilitating a meeting once, with a leadership team, and the, goal was always to have the agenda ready the day before, so that people could actually prepare. And on the day of the meeting, there was nothing on the agenda. Nobody had contributed anything. And then it's like, okay, there's nothing on here. I'm canceling the meeting. And that was almost shocking to people, like that this is a thing that you could do. And, there were some protests, that, even without an agenda, this meeting serves maybe a social purpose, right? And that, it's nice to see people. And I do get that. But maybe there are better ways to achieve that. Um, and I think you gave this, a name later on, just canceling a meeting that doesn't have a purpose or an agenda. You called this, pulling a Matthias, um, which is also how we reference in our book. So I invite everybody to pull the Matthias on meetings that serve no purpose.
Yeah.
That's probably the most common one. Like everybody gets, like when I talk to people about meetings, and I even just mention a meeting that has the title, that has sync in the title, like sync on
Or check
something, like,
check in.
or check in. That those are the meetings that usually just show up on your calendar. And well, who knows what could happen, right? Like if you are someone's boss, like this is going to be your medium. And if you're, a person who isn't the boss on the receiving end of that, you will probably spend days wondering what this meeting is about, whether you're going to get some terrible feedback, whether you're going to be fired, all the worst things that you could think of. So there's good reasons to be explicit, to be intentional about this part of the meeting, right? Even
Right.
though it might not work 100% of the time. Some meetings you want to hide on the calendar, but anyway,
Yeah.
try, like,
Yeah.
but it is funny, like just talking about a sync meeting. Everybody already knows. Yes, these are usually the impromptu ones that show up and where it's like, what are we going to talk about? I
Yeah.
don't know. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the other things I've seen is, well, the most common thing I think that I've seen that leads to these ineffective meetings is no agenda, no purpose, no goal, certainly nothing that's shared in advance. Like that's number one. But then this closely followed, the second thing I've seen, and I see repeated time and time again, is even if you do the step of sharing an agenda, preparing in advance, if you don't have a plan for how you're going to facilitate the meeting,
uh,
and coordinate it, if you are the owner of the meeting, you're the one who is facilitating the meeting, like, it's often people do all this work, to get to the meeting, and then they don't think about how they're going to get the most out of the actual meeting time, and what sort of facilitation they're going to, you know, they're going to do to actually achieve those goals and those outcomes. And that's, really, really challenging. And it's a skill that can be learned, but I don't think we actually, as leaders and managers, put enough time into helping people to learn how to facilitate different facilitation techniques, all sorts of ways you can like work a group of people to achieve an outcome. So you don't have the hog, you don't have, or you're less likely to have, uh, someone who takes up a bunch of the time in the space because they're the loudest voices or they're the extrovert. But you try to make it so that it's more everyone's voice can be heard. So those are all techniques
yeah,
uh, that I think are really important to think about up front if you are the facilitator.
yeah. And I mean, not everybody is up to it to tell somebody to, to stop talking, basically. And just, it's, maybe there's also power dynamic involved. But again, I
Yeah,
think that, showing this as a manager or whoever is the boss in the room, that this is okay. And also
yeah,
that it's okay to be called out when you start hogging a room,
yeah,
is an important step here. And I think
yeah,
what I always like to do with any kind of responsibility is to rotate it. So that, not, it's not a single person who always bears that responsibility, but that
yeah,
the responsibilities of facilitating, of, whatever else, is important, of facilitating, maybe checking time, maybe taking notes, however that is distributed, that these responsibilities are distributed, right? Then everybody gets to observe other folks doing it, pick up some skills, and they just get to do that. Maybe also they get to be the person, who tells the boss to shut up for a moment and let someone else talk. And I mean, again, I hope, that even as the boss, people take that, gracefully and accept that they're not there to hog a meeting. But I
yeah,
think the rotating part here is a key for me, to make sure that, as many people as possible pick up these skills.
yeah. It's a great reminder, and all of it, not just the facilitation, then someone who takes the meeting notes, just continue to rotate that. What I think we've covered a lot of what makes them ineffective. um, what what are they good for? What what are some of the things that, I mean, you and I talk a lot about how so much of our coaching conversations come back to people not operating from shared assumptions or shared expectations. So like maybe the meetings can be a good place for moving towards clarity and moving towards clear expectations. Are we
Yeah.
clear on what we're trying to achieve, right?
So you mean alignment?
I was trying not to use the word. I was trying to avoid the business buzzword. But yeah, it's the hardest thing, right? Is to operate from shared expectations and it's so easy to diverge. And so can the meeting be a place where, the point of the meeting is try to be clear on assumptions and expectations? I mean, it's the one place, especially for hybrid teams or remote teams, where a group of people are focused ideally on the same information at the same time. Now that may not always be true, even in a meeting, but it is one of the places, right?
Yeah, very true. And I think that's where a meeting serves a good purpose, right? Where, and maybe instead of the word alignment, maybe to get people on the same page, or maybe to use a more visceral image where everybody leaves the meeting, nodding, which means that it's clear either what was decided or it's clear what happens next.
Yes.
All right, after this meeting, and not, I think those are the two ideals for me for a meeting. That either of those two clarities exists. It may be whatever else might be a purpose or on the agenda might not actually be useful to have on a meeting agenda, but rather use a different way of communicating. I think meetings have gotten, maybe ever since they were invented, whenever that was, maybe during Greek times, but maybe in the modern business, worlds, they've just become they've gotten a really bad reputation, which is kind of a shame because it is, if you're part of a meeting where the right people are there, the people that should be there are there, everybody gets their say, and in the end, everybody is just, yes, this is what's happening, and leaves the meeting with clarity. I do love those meetings, right?
Yeah.
Where you feel more energized afterwards than at the beginning, or at least I haven't lost a lot of motivation. So again, it's unfortunate that this doesn't happen a lot with meetings. Like, anyway, yeah, I think you're right. There's a group present. Ideally, the group is focused on one or two things. Everybody's listening, everybody's paying attention, and everybody understands what's being said and what's being decided. And there's just a nice energy that can come from that just doesn't exist when you just share a document that's been decided, without further commentary, and hope everybody gets it.
Yeah. Hope, cross your fingers, cross your toes. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should shift, I'm in Los Angeles, you're in Berlin. Most of our meetings are virtual. But as I was thinking about this episode, and I talk with some of my clients about it, but running a meeting in person versus virtual is, it's very, very different. Like, does that come up in your coaching? I'm curious, is it when and how to run different types of meetings based on the outcomes or the purpose? In a lot of companies, it's just not possible to get together frequently in person, because they're either fully remote or so geographically distributed, so they can only get together maybe once a year. But does that come up at all in your coaching practice? When and how to run it?
To run meetings in remote teams, or
in person versus virtual, basically.
Oh, okay. It does come up, yes, because probably the majority of my clients are now just, especially more on the engineering side, there's some level of being distributed, right? Whatever, and some level, some companies are limited to, we only hire maybe one time zone away from us.
Yeah.
And others only, for example, only hire in Germany, but it doesn't matter where. I've seen several of these things, and maybe the distinction for many of them is like everything that is part of the everyday or every week cycle that is, it's a team meeting. It is a meeting where, uh, decisions are made that aren't super high stakes, meaning they don't, necessarily impact the entire company. Maybe they decide, on maybe it's a planning meeting, maybe it's, a retrospective on how the last iteration went, or maybe even the last quarter. Um, all of the, or, stand up also. Many people still do that. Those things people don't mind being, you know, be having virtual. Although, I mean, the fun thing about a stand up was the idea of it was that people stand up, which, so that it's fast. Which of course is not happening in most remote settings unless someone is actually at their desk. Um, I mean, what I still hear and what I also feel is that these meetings, they lack a little something, something. Right? They lack a little of the good energy that can come from meetings, right? But I mean, you made a conscious choice to hire people, in different places. And so there's a physical impediment of getting them together for all of these meetings. It makes no sense. Like if you're not open to this idea of, that meetings run like this, like we're recording this, then, maybe you shouldn't have decided that that's a good thing to do. And then to the other side of your question, like when does physical presence make sense? I think a lot in this about like offsites or meetings where, something, maybe if it's a quarterly planning meeting, maybe it's a strategy meeting, maybe it's like we're deciding, uh, like the key themes for the next quarter or whatever time frame, or even just, the planning season. I mean, we're getting close to planning season.
Yep.
And it can make sense to spend a week in person or a couple of days to really hammer this out. And I think I mean, specifically, I'm talking about meetings that take at least a day, right? It's not like you're getting people together for a half day, for a couple of hours, or even just 1 hour. That makes no sense because it's very expensive, not just in terms of travel potentially, but also in terms of time. And I'm just thinking about in these meetings, it is useful to have people in a room because that also means they're even more focused, right?
Yep.
And might not be true still for everybody, but it's easier to tell somebody to see, is somebody picking up their phone? Is somebody using their laptop and things like that? I think that's one type of meeting I'm thinking about. And I have another, but maybe there's some stuff you want to throw in on this as well.
um, yeah, I was just thinking about like one of the considerations that I always think about before deciding like how I'm going to host the meeting or how I'm going to facilitate is how well how well does the group know each other? What are the group dynamics for this
Yeah.
particular meeting? And then secondly is like how clear is everyone in that group, that team on what they're trying to achieve? So if that my answer to those questions is like, oh, they don't really know each other and we're just rolling this out or we're changing this and it's not really clear, like something's happening, then I think I have to kind of like step back and be like, okay, well, the group doesn't know each other very well
Hmm.
and we're not so clear on this, or we're actually changing something, like, then I
Yeah.
have to, then I kind of have to think about like, well, okay, it may not be an option for us to get together in person. We're distributed across too many time zones. It's too expensive, or we're hybrid, or, um, and in that case, like I have to, sometimes I've only, started doing this and kind of think about, okay, like what are the prerequisites? Like I want to get to this, I want this change, or I want to get to this thing, but I might have to do some pre-work, some
Yeah.
Stations, some one-on-one, some smaller group, some team building conversations and meetings before I jump into this bigger topic or goal. And I don't know, that's all stuff that I think we just kind of gloss over. We just think, oh, we got to change this. Let's quickly get everyone together. And you're not thinking about the group dynamics and not thinking about, okay, well, this will be much more successful if we kind of roll this out in a different way. I don't know. That's where my mind was going, is just how important it is. Yeah, the annual meetings, the quarterly meetings, the offsites, things that are going to take, multi-day or day long. If you have the opportunity, yes, do it in person, especially if you don't know the group very well. You have an opportunity to do some team building, especially if you're doing your annual planning, doing some of that stuff in person. The results are going to be better if you can do it in person.
Yeah.
But if not, think about the prerequisites. It is possible. Lots of companies do it all the time. But you got to plan kind of steps sequentially to get to the outcome you're looking for. That makes sense?
Yes. I think even when you have a group that is gelling well, they're working together well, and they can argue well, and also make decisions together, trust each other. I think what I've come to appreciate is a different level of preparation, but still, like the more effective offsites or gatherings that are in person to me are the ones where people come prepared, right? And it's not like you start sorting through things as everybody arrives. It's maybe as jet lagged. And then you're trying to make a plan based on, I don't know how people feel in the moment or what people come up with. I think the effort that needs to go into preparation for even just in-person gatherings to me is also usually underrated. Like I used to spend weeks working on the agenda, distributing homework, like assigning people different topics, and then also asking them to you're going to present something at this, and ideally, it's a presentation and a supporting document as two examples. And so you have 3 weeks until then. So please prepare and share a draft, an idea with me up front, not necessarily to give you feedback on the idea itself, but maybe on the format, completeness, and things like that. And in the same way, like spending time on the agenda itself, right? Like we already talked about like how important it is for a meeting agenda. Like if you get people together for an entire week, you better be fully clear, like what is happening, like each day. Like, it's nice to leave some wiggle room for things because can't predict everything, how long each topic is going to take. And there is probably such a thing as over planning these in-person events. I've certainly been guilty of that. But yeah, as you talked about preparing, I was like, this is a thing that needs to happen when you have people who travel from far places. You want to make sure that time is well used and you're not using that time well when everybody scrambles to brainstorms just after they arrive.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very true. I don't know. I think I'm jumping around a bit, but I think of when you see, or you've seen it, with your own calendar or with your clients, like folks in this meeting madness, just meetings, not productive, they're ineffective, they're poor, all the things we talked about. What are some of the things that you do or try to do to reset? One of the things we've talked about previously was like that meeting audit, like really looking at your calendar and or looking at your client's calendar together, just to see, okay, what's going on? Let's just look at the types of meetings, and kind of start to classify them and audit them and look at who's in them, how many of them are,
Yeah.
have a clear purpose.
Yeah. And value, right? I think
Right.
the value question is maybe the flip side of, does this meeting have a purpose? It might have a purpose, but it might no longer offer any value. Right? And I think that can happen. Like, as you go through this audit, it can be a useful question to ask about the meeting and about your presence in that meeting, or in, like all the individuals who are in the invite.
Yeah.
Do they add value? Also, maybe, do they get value out of this meeting? And then, does this meeting still offer any value to the organization? And I think
Yeah.
that can be maybe a helpful framing for looking at these meetings individually. But I definitely encourage clients to do that. And then also to be open about, say, combining meetings, right? If you have two meetings in a week and they're practically the same people present, that could probably be one meeting. It's a very simple thing. If you have a stand up, maybe think about whether that's actually still the most useful format, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe a third thing, if your leadership team meeting is mostly everybody giving each other updates, which is, again, like maybe is so going deeper than the simple value question, then that's probably not a good use of everybody's time. Right?
Right.
And so these kinds of things, I think about a few of these categories, like update meetings, uh, meetings that don't have a purpose, meetings that don't offer any value, or meetings where I don't offer any value. Um, those are some review categories that you can go through your calendar, and probably, whew, there's probably quite a few meetings that you can bow out of, or
Yeah.
that you can just remove from the calendar. But even that causes, like, its own set of issues, because people get oddly attached to meetings. Like, because there's a social aspect, because they might not feel like another forum where they can talk about whatever is being discussed. It's weird,
Well,
but
there's also important, a hierarchy of you being in a meeting and like you being in that seat in that meeting and having that seat. There's that like importance of
yeah.
hierarchy. Yeah, I love that you brought up value and really looking at the audit as a time to step back and not think of like, okay, not only is the goal clear, are these meetings clear, but is the value there, and really looking at who is attending these meetings. People often will attend meetings just because there's no other place or other channels currently set up to get whatever information they think they need. And so usually that happens because the company's growing and these meetings just have kind of lived on. And maybe it's a time to look at, like, could you share this information in different ways? Is there, other ways beside a meeting where notes could be shared, or information can be shared, in
Yeah.
different ways, asynchronously. Um, yeah, I think that's a really healthy thing. Look at the value of each of these, and kind of go through that audit. And then I think the thing you said, Matthias, was like, what value is it for you? Like, are you just in the meetings because of your title? Well, maybe there's an opportunity to delegate or sponsor, or to just fully remove yourself from the situation, from these meetings.
Mm. Yeah, which might also change the dynamic of the meetings,
Right.
and not necessarily for the worse, because, I mean,
Yeah.
as you said, like, presence in meetings has different purposes, or it also has different effects. Like, you can be in that meeting because this is your pedestal.
Yeah.
This is your place. You own this meeting. This is where people get to listen to you.
Yeah.
Or you're in that meeting because someone thought it important for you to be there.
Yeah.
And sometimes that importance can even just serve from, I want my boss to be there to show them, like, I'm doing a good job. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's fair, right? But it's, those, I want the boss to be there maybe as a counterweight to something or to support me or
Yeah.
for
To
all of these reasons.
neutralize something or yeah.
Neutralize something. Yeah. All of those things. And I mean, usually all of those things point to some unhealthy dynamics in a team,
Yeah.
or some imbalances in maybe how promotions are done, or maybe even some level of favoritism,
Yeah.
which is all not healthy. And it's like, it's the other thing is the presence of me, say me, CTO, being in a meeting and everybody else in that meeting is reporting up to me, then my presence shifts that meeting, whether I like it or not. It's like Schrodinger's cat for meetings. Just being there, you don't know what the meeting would be like if you're not there.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be worse. Maybe it would be better. Maybe it would be as the cat, it would be dead or alive. But the only way for you to know is to participate in the meeting, and then see what happens. Right. I think if it's a virtual meeting, there are now different ways you can do that. But
Yeah.
also, like, nobody wants to spend all day watching recordings of meetings, just to see what it's like. Sometimes it can be interesting, though. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for
I'm
me,
so
it's
glad you
usually go ahead.
I was going to say I'm so glad that you brought Schrodinger into the conversation.
I visited his grave in Austria. I stood in front of it. There was no box on top of the grave. Uh, but anyway, like I forgot what I wanted to say about this whole Schrodinger's or CTO meeting kind of situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's plenty of reasons.
I'll jump in and I'll share one thing about the meeting audit that I used to do with my calendar, and then after I share that, I want to shift us to one-on-ones because
Mm-hmm.
those get a lot of focus, and I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't have a touch on one-on-ones. But before that, so one of the things I used to do, and I'm just one of those color-coded calendar people, but I would actually color code my meetings based on kind of what type of meeting it was.
Mm-hmm.
And this just really helped me to kind of see the context of I could see just at a glance, and I would try to group things just so I didn't have as much context switching. But I kind of did it into three main buckets. The first was I called like just cadence meetings, and these are the ones that Matthias you've been talking about. Like they're the most common, right? Um, they're the one-on-one meetings, they're your weekly leadership meeting, they're your weekly team meetings, or they just happen regularly on a set cadence. And it's the most common type of meeting, which also means it's the meeting that often gets the least a bit of attention, and
Mm-hmm.
which I think will lead into why one-on-ones become too routine. But that's not the first one. The other is like I call it a catalyst meeting, and those are the ones where something's changing, or you want to
Mm-hmm.
brainstorm, you want to get people together, and you want to come up with some problem solving, or you have a decision to get to, and those are the ones that actually require the most amount of work, right? The most preparation, the most facilitation. Those don't just happen by getting people just to show up. There's usually quite a bit of work ahead to get that meeting to be productive.
Yeah.
Um, and then the third one I think is these are all C's. I'm just realizing this is context. Uh, what's interesting about the context ones is this is about learning and sharing and you know knowledge dissemination. It's
Mm-hmm.
it, it's the one I think that we take the most for granted. Um, our job as leaders is share, to bring everyone towards common expectations and towards shared context,
Mm-hmm.
and is making sure that everyone has a sense of what's going on. It's that head nodding, it's that like reminding, it's sharing information, it's being somewhat repetitive sometimes, and each of those three different types of meetings, when I saw them in my calendar and I saw the different color, they just require, for me, a different type of energy, and also a different type of preparation, a different type of facilitation.
Yeah.
Uh, And I just think, like, again, not taking meetings for granted, if you really start to think about it, there are different types of meetings, and different types of meetings require different preparation and different planning, and different prerequisites. So it just kind
Yeah.
of helped me to visualize it and then to actually prepare for my week ahead or for my month ahead.
Yeah. I think maybe one thing also still on the audit, like I think that audit can happen on a individual level, but it also can happen on a team level, right?
Oh,
It's a discussion to have with the team, even whether a certain meeting is still valuable, what could change to make it more valuable, rather than just leaving it run for all eternity, which is
yeah,
also kind of almost the other hack to expire meetings without having to do anything. It's to limit how long they repeat.
yeah,
Like at the maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 3 months. Shouldn't probably be longer than that because again, like people get very attached to meetings.
yeah,
But in there's a forcing function that almost triggers the discussion. Do we want to keep going or do we
yeah,
leave this as it is? Or do we need a different format? Like whatever it is.
yeah,
Uh I like this also on a team happening on a team level for certain meetings. Because then you don't always have to guess that people can understand that it's okay to be more open in discussions about meetings, right? And
yeah,
not just meetings to complain about them, but rather to figure out what would need to change or what would need to be different for this meeting to be
yeah,
effective.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it's important not just individually, but absolutely at the team level. And and just some of those like norms of, okay, we're not going to have recurring meetings past that recur longer than 90 days. And that
Yeah,
just becomes you don't set a meeting that recurs past 90 days. And after 90 days, there's a opportunity to step back and say, hey, is this still serving us? Are we still getting value from this? Is there, you know, are the right people in
yeah,
the room? That's a really easy thing to implement, that will have, you know, immediate, I think, benefit. Just that alone. So let's just spend a couple minutes before we start to wrap up on the lovely one-on-one meeting. It feels like it's gotten a bit of backlash. There's this anti one-on-one discussions. There's companies out there that say, CEOs are like, we don't do any one-on-ones.
hmm.
Um, but yeah, what's your hot take on one-on-ones? Are they important? Why are they controversial? What's going on with the one-on-one?
I mean, I do love a good one-on-one. I like a good one-on-one. Good, again, being, not necessarily meeting the same criteria as meetings overall because they serve a different purpose, to me. And part of that purpose is, I build a rapport and maintain a rapport with the people who report to me or with other people in the organization. Because I mean, especially on the C level, or as you move up, like it becomes more important to talk to other people. It's a relationship building thing, right? And
Yeah,
just being in communication, like what's going on with you, what's going on with me. Um, this can happen in all directions. And then, it's assuming a company has an open feedback culture, uh, like, every now and then or on some regular cadence, a one-on-one is a place where you get to share feedback with each other, and feedback has a corrective part to it where I get to understand my blind spot and maybe get some advice on how to what to do about them. But an open flow of feedback also contributes to building trust, right? It's part of the whole rapport thing. It's like, I know you can give me feedback, and I respond well to it, and vice versa. Why it's controversial is an interesting question. I'm not, I mean, they take up a lot, they take up time, right? And
yeah,
I think everything that takes up time, uh, I mean, it's always it's always a challenge when you're in leadership or anywhere really. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
always seems like you could use that time more effectively for something else. And maybe part of this backlash is for managers, like we'd rather you spend more time in code or in product or whatever is closer to what the rest of the team is doing than talking
Yeah.
to each and everyone individually.
Yeah.
I do, just to add one more thing, like I do see one danger, and I've seen this with clients and also with myself as I did my one-on-ones. It is tempting to use a one-on-one A for updates, which is just makes it really boring. Or to spend a big chunk of like, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I'll work on next. This is what I finished. Where it's rather a meeting to discuss growth opportunities, right? Interesting new projects and progress on them that can help
Yeah.
somebody learn new skills. Um, but where was I going with this? God.
You were talking about, they become about just sharing updates and um maybe they just become that kind of routine updates. Here's what I'm working on.
Yes, thank you. That brought me back on track. The other thing that is tempting to use them for is to use them to spread information, right?
Mhm.
And this is a different type of update, but say I as a manager have my regular one-on-ones and I use them to inform people of something that's been going on, whether it's the organization, maybe there's a change, like you talked about these catalyst meetings.
Yep.
Maybe I came out of a meeting there and I'm using all of the one-on-ones in my team to give people updates on this, right? And where these one-on-ones suddenly turn into like almost like side channels
Yes.
where people hear the same. I mean, they
It's the
hear the
telephone
same.
game. It's the
It
telephone
is,
game. Like,
it is
yeah.
a telephone game. Exactly. People
Yeah.
hear somewhat the same information, which is probably not true. Like everybody, it's how how I phrase it to everybody is probably going to be different in every one-on-one meeting. And that also means everybody understood something different, right? And probably not how it was intended to be.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that to me is like that's part of the danger of one-on-one meetings, but it's not
Yeah.
like that can be, that still to me doesn't mean like one-on-ones are a waste of time or anything. It's just like, I knew I had a manager once who used one-on-ones this way, and then I encouraged them to just use a different channel just to share information, a written channel, ideally, where they could at least be sure that what is written, what is shared, is the same thing for everybody. And then
Yeah.
maybe people can ask questions in the one-on-ones, and maybe you update the information accordingly. But yeah, that's one thing that I've learned over the years. It's like, that can make meetings, one-on-one meetings, not a dangerous place, but that it's just, uh, impact a team in negative ways. I will just phrase it in the most businessy words I could come up with.
Yeah. 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 Very, very well said. I think the thing that I really heard is they become so controversial because they take up so much time. And then because they take up so much time and they've become so routine, they're just these places for updates or for this cascade of information that shouldn't be shared in that manner or could be more effective if shared in a different way. And this gets back to why the meeting audit's so important, is like really look at,
Mm,
I think one-on-ones are so important for all the things you said, building rapport, for sharing feedback, for clarifying expectations between you and an individual. And um, but if your one-on-ones have become routine and updates and, like really like, yeah, that I could see there's going to be, they're not effective, and opportunity there to shift them back to something that has a purpose and a value.
yeah.
Okay, so we're running on time. Is there anything else you want to add um, about meetings that we haven't covered yet? There's so much we could cover. We could probably talk about. We could do a
It's
whole podcast just on meetings.
We should schedule another meeting like this on meetings. Uh, I would throw in one controversial take. I will say, like, maybe, just because I mean, I tend to focus maybe too much on the negatives. Just for the meeting audit, I really like your three category distinction. The three C's of meetings, the cadence, catalyst, and context, which I think is like, it's useful for for individual, for my personal view on meetings, but it's also good to give people this, to give the team this kind of categorization, because a
Yeah.
more common notation for meetings is probably one where this is an update meeting, this is a decision meeting, and then the worst of them all is the brainstorming meeting,
Yeah.
which this is probably would be my hot take at the tail end of this conversation, is like brainstorming meetings without preparation, just like offsites without preparation,
Disaster.
are a waste of time.
Just
Right?
say it,
Like,
Matthias. It's garbage. Just say
it
it.
is
It's
utter garbage to get people together. Just because like some consulting company years ago wrote about how great brainstorming meetings are. Usually what you find in brainstorming meetings is, an effect that was probably warrants an entire different conversation from game theory, which is the Nash equilibrium, where people tend to default on some sort of denominator. Usually it's not the one that you actually hope for in a brainstorming meeting. So I will just say, on the record, brainstorming meetings, without proper preparation, without a proper structure, are usually a waste of time. Whether
yep.
that does not matter, whether that's in person or virtual. It's just, it's just garbage.
Yep. Yep.
This is going to get us
Yeah.
the clicks. This is going to get us,
I was just looking at my notes, and we we touched on how important it is to think about the facilitation
Hmm.
techniques that are going to be useful. We didn't really cover too much on the different types of facilitation techniques, but um, yeah, I mean, it goes back to, if you're the meeting facilitator, you have to think in advance of the outcomes that you want from the meeting, and then consider who's important, and then how you're gonna get towards that outcome or towards those goals.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just happen by, scheduling the meeting and getting everyone in the room. There's like, what are the different techniques you're gonna, use to get people to be comfortable sharing, depending on, what you're looking for. And so we I don't know, I just think like that's certainly an area where I've underprepared. Um,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until I really started to learn there are different facilitation techniques out there that can really help to get a group to go away from, the loudest voice in the room to kind of more participation across all people in the group. I don't know, just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's an entirely different, well, it sounds almost like a separate conversation, but I agree. Like, uh, been thinking a lot about this as, as I got closer to facilitating an offsite, or even as I, did my own offsites back in the day for my leadership teams. As you said, like, those things don't happen by accident. Like, a good meeting doesn't
Hmm,
happen by accident. We could probably, say that to close this out.
absolutely.
It takes time. And again, like, it brings us back full circle. Why it doesn't happen often enough, because there's never enough time. And
Yep.
ironically, much of the reason for that is because there are so many meetings,
Yep. Yep.
which is kind of ironic. But
Yep.
here we are.
We're here now. Okay, I
We're,
love that. We're gonna close it out with a good meeting doesn't happen by accident. But let's since we did it last time, let's have a little fun closing segment. Is
oh
there
yeah,
anything that you're currently reading or cooking? Oh, you just did some kimchi, I know.
yes,
Any current thing you're enjoying, hobby, game, craft? What?
yes, many. Many.
All
As
right.
you said,
Let's hear.
I made a fresh batch of kimchi. I think last week. Making kimchi is an incredibly messy business. I have red stains all over my kitchen apron, which you gifted to me. So I'm working to get to get those stains out. But making kimchi still is super fun. Like I filled an entire 8 liter or close to 2 Freedom gallons, a crock pot with kimchi. And it is surprising of the things that you can ferment, how active it gets and how fast. Like it only takes a day or two for it to really bubble. And you need to be careful that it doesn't, grow up, move out of the crock pot. I think that's been one thing. It's still curing in the fridge now. And I've also learned that there's a thing that uh, fridges specifically to store kimchi that exist. I don't have one. I'm not planning to get one, but I love this. I love the spirit of them.
You
Um,
you want a kimchi fridge. You know you do. Yeah.
the last batch I made probably stuck around for 2 years or 1.5 at least. Like kimchi keeps on a surprisingly long time in the fridge, and I just love kimchi. I think the other thing I did is and this is relevant to a future conversation. I got my knives resharpened, all of my
Mm.
kitchen knives. I have a knife person, which is thankfully in the neighborhood. Was also a fun guy to chat to about knives, kitchen knives specifically. I will just I had all of those resharpened. A few of them are still there because I had to do this in batches because I needed, you know, knives to work with. And I
Yeah.
was, it was, when I picked up the first badge, the person almost, just pricked himself with one of the knife because it was so sharp. It had such a sharp point. Um, and coming back home, it was just like, oh, this is such a joy to use. Anyway, uh, I think those are probably the two ones. Like in terms of reading, as you know, I just picked up a big stash of books, so I'll probably have more to report. I've actually been reading a couple of Marvel comics in
Mm.
preparation of upcoming movies. That's what I've been reading. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to doing stuff with the kimchi, specifically kimchi fried rice, and maybe a
Ooh,
kimchi tofu soup, which is also very delightful. And it is the season here in Germany for those kinds of
gosh,
meals.
I wish I could just transport myself to your place for some kimchi fried rice. It sounds so good.
Oh, my fridge smells really nice right now. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I made in this last week, I made a ramen. I made a
Mm,
miso red curry kind of peanut ramen broth. And then I had tofu in it and bok choy, and
mm. Oh yeah, I can feel that.
it was, oh yeah, really, really good. Had that actually for a couple nights. I just finished Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, his autobiography.
Oh, right.
This is probably sacrilege to say, but I'd never really been a big Bruce Springsteen fan. I mean, just not really a big musical influence for me, but certainly appreciate him and what he achieved and what he stood for. And it's a great book. Like it's so, I feel like I understand, and I don't know. Now I actually want to go listen to some more of his music. And he wrote it across 7 years. He just comes across as very human, which I really appreciate, and
That's
vulnerable. And
nice.
yeah, yeah, it was great. So I don't know what I'm going to read next. Um, to be determined.
Good. I mean,
Yes.
speaking of music, I also went to see Haim in London a couple of weeks ago, which was
And you're on brand. You're on
I'm on
brand.
brand. Yes, I also went to see another band, but I will reveal that in the next in the next episode who that was, but
Oh,
super fun.
a little teaser there, everyone.
A little teaser, yeah.
Stay tuned.
That was super fun. They're a family staple. Like my daughter, who's now 16, grew up with Haim. And it's been nice to have a family outing and to finally see them play live. They unfortunately haven't been to Berlin in quite some time, which if you're listening, please come. Um, but they're just incredibly skilled as artists and just also incredible live entertainers. It's just very joyful.
A good Los Angeles band.
A good Los Angeles band. An amazing Los Angeles band.
Ooh, all right. All right. I think we have covered it.
We have, yes, probably this a lot more to cover about meetings, but we tried our best.
Yeah, I think this one deserves a follow-up, so stay tuned.
Probably. Yeah.
All right.
See you.